Major Olivia Carter strolled into a quaint grocery store on a serene Sunday afternoon in Asheville, North Carolina. Dressed casually in a soft gray hoodie, dark jeans, and sneakers, she blended seamlessly with the other shoppers. With her unassuming appearance, no one could have guessed she had spent years leading elite rescue missions and commanding troops in some of the world's most dangerous regions. This moment of normalcy, choosing fresh produce and essentials, was a rare treat for Olivia after an exhausting week. But the tranquility was short-lived, shattered by an incident that would reveal the unexpected side of human behavior. At the far end of the aisle, a man in a neatly pressed firefighter's uniform, Deputy Chief Mark Daniels, accidentally knocked a jar of marinara sauce and a bag of rice onto the floor. The sound of glass breaking drew Olivia's attention. She paused, watching as Mark glanced at the mess, muttered something under his breath, and then nonchalantly walked away without a second thought. Olivia, trained to observe details and take accountability, felt a twinge of unease. The uniform Mark wore symbolized respect and responsibility, yet his actions betrayed those values. She couldn't ignore it. Approaching him, her tone was firm yet courteous. "Excuse me, sir," she said. "You seem to have dropped a few items. Perhaps you could clean it up so it doesn't inconvenience anyone else." Mark turned slowly, his expression shifting from irritation to smug superiority. His gaze swept over Olivia dismissively. "And who do you think you are to tell me what to do?" he sneered. "I have more important things to worry about than a little spill." The tension in the aisle thickened as other shoppers began to notice the exchange. Olivia's experience on the battlefield had taught her to remain composed, even in the face of arrogance. Her voice remained steady. "As someone wearing that uniform, you represent not just yourself but your profession. Setting an example through small actions can go a long way in earning respect." Instead of acknowledging her point, Mark's demeanor grew more confrontational. "Save your lectures," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You're just another nosy civilian trying to feel important." The situation had drawn the attention of a small crowd. Whispers rippled through the onlookers as Olivia stood her ground, her calm resolve in stark contrast to Mark's growing hostility. Before she could respond, a young boy standing nearby unexpectedly piped up. "Mom always says heroes clean up their own messes," the boy said, his innocent voice cutting through the tension. The remark seemed to take Mark off guard for a moment, but his expression quickly darkened. Ignoring the child, he turned to Olivia. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," he spat, stepping closer. What Mark didn't know was that Olivia wasn't just a retired officer. She had recently been recognized for her role in training emergency responders across the country, a fact that was about to come to light in an unexpected way. Just as Olivia prepared to respond, a store employee approached, having overheard part of the exchange. "Is there a problem here?" the employee asked, glancing between Olivia and Mark. Before Olivia could explain, one of the shoppers stepped forward, a woman holding her phone, its screen lit with a recording of the entire incident. "Yes, there's a problem," she said firmly. "This man thinks he's above cleaning up after himself. Maybe the fire department would like to see how their deputy chief behaves in public." Olivia's words were firm, a clear warning, but instead of heeding them, Mark let out a laugh, dripping with mockery and arrogance. "Listen," he said, his tone heavy with sarcasm. "You seem to think you know a lot about what it takes to be a firefighter, but you don't have a clue. This isn't worth worrying about, and honestly, you should stick to minding your own business." Olivia noticed the curious gazes of the growing crowd. Several shoppers had started pulling out their phones, discreetly recording the unfolding confrontation. Despite the pressure, she remained focused. Inwardly, she felt a deep anger, not just at Mark's dismissive attitude but at the underlying injustice of his behavior. This wasn't just a personal insult, it was a reflection of the societal prejudices she had been fighting against her entire career. Standing tall, Olivia's eyes locked with Mark's, her determination unwavering. "You're judging the wrong person," she said, her voice soft yet commanding. "You may not realize it, but the way you behave now will have consequences, not just for me but for you, too. Mark smirked again, brushing off her words as if they held no weight. Behind Olivia's calm exterior, however, her resolve burned stronger. She recognized that this was no ordinary argument. It was an opportunity to defend her principles and the values she had always upheld, even in the face of adversity. As Mark's mocking laughter echoed down the aisle, Olivia refused to flinch. His eyes, filled with contempt, seemed to dare her to lose her composure. Instead, she leaned into the wisdom and poise of her years as a leader. "I'm not here to argue," Olivia said, her voice calm but resolute. "I'm here to remind you that your actions, no matter how small, reflect who you are, not just as a firefighter but as a person. Setting an example is part of your duty, and you should know that better than anyone else." Her words resonated through the store, drawing even more attention from the onlookers. Shoppers paused their routines entirely, watching the situation unfold. Mark, now visibly uncomfortable under the weight of the crowd's silent judgment, tried to mask his embarrassment with even more arrogance. "Responsibility," he sneered, his voice laced with sarcasm. "And who are you to lecture me? Just a random woman, nothing special, nothing more. Don't think you have the right to stand here and tell me what to do. You don't know the first thing about my job." Mark's words dripped with sexism and disdain, a cutting blow meant to undermine Olivia's confidence. But instead of letting his words wound her, she drew a deep breath, her gaze steady and unwavering. She knew that every choice she made in this moment was a testament to the difference between them. Olivia didn't need to raise her voice or react with anger. Her composure and determination were louder than any insult he could throw her way. The crowd watched with bated breath, sensing that this encounter wasn't just about a spilled jar, it was a clash of integrity and accountability against arrogance and prejudice. A true leader rises above arrogance and prejudice. Olivia's voice remained calm but carried the weight of unwavering conviction. "I don't need you to understand who I am," she said, her tone steady. "But I need you to understand this: every person in this community deserves respect. If you can't offer that, then perhaps you're the one unworthy of the uniform you wear." Mark let out a mocking laugh, loud enough to echo through the store. His voice was laced with disdain. "And what do you think you can do about it?" he sneered. "I'm a deputy chief, and the law is on my side. You're just an ordinary woman, you should know your place before you get yourself into real trouble." His words weren't just dismissive, they were a direct challenge. But Olivia stood unflinching. The silence in the store became deafening as every eye turned toward her. This was no longer a personal confrontation. It had become a defining moment to stand for justice and integrity. Olivia squared her shoulders, her stance firm and resolute as though she were back on the battlefield. Despite Mark's aggressive posture and mocking tone, she refused to back down. Her voice, calm yet razor-sharp, cut through the tension. "You can dismiss me if you like," she said. "But remember this: arrogance and contempt for others only expose your lack of character. I'm not here to fight for power. I'm here to remind you of your responsibility and to ensure you don't abuse it." Mark's confident smirk faltered, his composure cracking under the weight of Olivia's words. He searched her face for signs of fear or hesitation, but all he found was unwavering strength. The crowd, now fully captivated, stood in complete silence, some with their phones raised, recording every moment. "Don't try to act noble in front of me," Mark growled, his tone turning defensive. "You're nothing but a troublemaker. If I wanted, I could have you thrown out of here right now." Olivia didn't flinch. A flicker of calm confidence crossed her face, unsettling Mark further. "If you believe your power gives you the right to behave this way, let the law decide that," she said, her voice even and unshaken. "You've underestimated me, and everyone watching this moment." The air was thick with tension as the two stood face to face, Mark, with his towering and aggressive demeanor, and Olivia, a woman of average height and unassuming attire. Yet, her presence radiated an authority that couldn't be ignored. You can continue to insult me, Olivia said, her tone unwavering. But I'm not here to defend my personal honor. I'm here to defend the principles I've upheld my entire life. Everyone here is a witness to your behavior, and if you think you can belittle me with words, you're mistaken. The crowd's silence was electric, their support for Olivia evident in their watchful eyes. Mark's tough exterior began to crumble as he realized the tide was turning against him. Embarrassment flashed across his face, but he quickly masked it with anger. He stepped closer, his voice rising in aggression. "Don't make this worse," he barked. "I'm a deputy chief, and I have every right to deal with you right here, right now." Instead of intimidating Olivia, his threats only strengthened her resolve. With deliberate calm, she pulled her phone from her pocket. There was no panic in her movements, only purpose. As she dialed a number, her voice remained steady, cutting through the oppressive silence. "You have your rights," Olivia said, her tone as sharp as steel. "And I have mine. Let's see on whose side the law truly stands." When the call connected, she spoke clearly and without hesitation. "Hello, this is Olivia Carter. I'm at the main grocery store in Asheville. There is an officer here abusing his authority and threatening citizens. I need the appropriate authorities to address this immediately." Mark's face drained of color as her words sank in. His overconfidence shattered, replaced with the stark realization that the situation had spiraled beyond his control. The crowd, now emboldened by Olivia's unwavering stance, murmured in approval, their phones capturing the moment that justice began to unfold. The crowd began to murmur, their whispers growing louder with every passing second. A few people stopped recording to make their own calls to the authorities. Despite the rising tension, Olivia remained calm, her composure unshaken amidst the chaos. "What do you think you're doing?" Mark roared, stepping closer to her. His voice was filled with rage, but Olivia didn't budge. Her piercing gaze held his, unwavering and fearless. "I'm doing what you should be doing," she replied, her voice steady and authoritative. "Standing up for fairness and responsibility." At that moment, the sharp wail of police sirens cut through the air outside. The crowd parted, clearing the way as officers entered the store. Olivia raised her hand, pointing directly at Mark, her gaze never leaving him. "This is the person you need to investigate. His actions have been fully documented and witnessed by everyone here." Mark, who had been riding high on his arrogance, now looked visibly shaken. His confidence melted away, replaced by confusion and anxiety. Olivia, in contrast, stood tall and resolute, her calm demeanor reflecting the quiet strength of someone who had long anticipated this moment. She knew this wasn't just about her, it was a moment to ensure accountability and justice. The tension in the store thickened as the doors swung open again. This time, Mayor Jonathan Harlan stepped inside, his presence commanding instant respect. His sharp eyes surveyed the room before settling on Olivia. His determined strides silenced the murmurs of the crowd, and Mark stiffened, his arrogance crumbling under the mayor's piercing gaze. Mark attempted to stammer out an explanation. "Mr. Mayor, this is just a misunderstanding. I didn't mean." "Enough," Jonathan said firmly, cutting him off with a tone that brooked no argument. His voice was calm but carried the weight of authority. "I came here because of an urgent call from Major Olivia Carter, a woman I hold in the highest regard. Your actions have been reported and witnessed by countless people. Don't think for a second that your excuses will erase what you've done." Olivia stood still, her eyes steady as she met Jonathan's. While she felt a small measure of relief knowing justice was at hand, her expression remained focused, a reminder that this moment was bigger than her. It was about standing up against systemic abuse and ensuring accountability. Jonathan turned to her, his tone softening. "Major Carter, I trust you are unharmed. This behavior is not only unacceptable but a betrayal of the values we stand for. It will be dealt with swiftly." Olivia nodded, her voice as firm as her stance. "I'm fine, but this isn't just about me. It's about holding those in power accountable for their actions. If I hadn't stood up today, how many others would have been subjected to the same treatment? Jonathan's expression hardened as he faced Mark. You have not only abused your authority but have insulted a decorated military leader and eroded public trust in our institutions. You are unfit to wear that uniform. A woman from the crowd stepped forward, handing her phone to the mayor. I recorded the entire incident, she said. Jonathan reviewed the video briefly, his jaw tightening as he watched. Turning to the officers who had accompanied him, he spoke with measured resolve. Relieve him of his badge and weapon immediately. An investigation will be launched, and he will face the consequences of his actions. The officers obeyed swiftly, stripping Mark of his insignia as the crowd outside broke into spontaneous applause. The cheers echoed through the store, a tribute not only to Olivia's courage but also to the decisive action taken by the mayor. Mark stood frozen, his face pale and defeated, as the weight of his actions fully sank in. Olivia remained poised, her steady gaze watching the events unfold. She had not only defended herself but had made a stand for justice, proving that courage and integrity could prevail against arrogance and prejudice. Though Olivia Carter never sought recognition, she felt a deep sense of relief as Mayor Jonathan Harlan turned to her, his voice filled with respect. Major Carter, he said, his tone sincere, this city needs people like you to remind us of the importance of integrity and responsibility. I'm deeply sorry for what you endured today. Olivia nodded, her eyes reflecting gratitude. Thank you, Mayor. I only hope that this incident leads to meaningful change. Jonathan's face grew solemn, yet sympathetic. It will. I'll make sure of it. As Olivia stepped out of the grocery store and into the warm sunlight, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. Yet, she knew the fight for fairness and accountability was far from over. This was just one battle in a larger, ongoing struggle. She was ready to keep fighting, not only for herself but for those unable to stand up on their own. Inside the store, Mark Daniels was stripped of his badge and weapon. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by fear and confusion. He was escorted out in heavy silence, his head bowed, as the murmuring crowd followed his every move. The police car that carried him away was shadowed by the lingering criticism of witnesses and the weight of his actions. At the station, Mark was immediately questioned. Video evidence and witness testimonies painted a damning picture, leaving no room for denial. The head of the department, informed by Mayor Harlan, addressed the incident publicly, condemning Mark's actions as a stain on the profession. By the end of the day, Mark was suspended and faced a full investigation. The news spread like wildfire. Videos of Mark abusing his authority and disrespecting Olivia were shared millions of times, sparking widespread outrage. Emboldened by the coverage, others who had been mistreated by Mark came forward with their stories, further solidifying his fall from grace. Once proud of his position and power, Mark now found himself utterly alone. Former colleagues distanced themselves, and neighbors whispered behind closed doors. In the solitude of his modest home, he sat with his head in his hands, consumed by regret. The realization hit hard: pride and abuse of power had not only harmed others but led to his own undoing. Meanwhile, Olivia resumed her life with quiet determination. Though she avoided the spotlight, the community's admiration for her grew. Her actions had forced accountability, but more importantly, they had sparked a larger conversation about ethics and responsibility in law enforcement. Olivia's name became synonymous with courage and integrity. Mark's downfall didn't end with his suspension. Legal charges for abuse of power and making threats were brought against him. At his public trial, he stood before the court, head bowed, stripped of the arrogance he once wore so proudly. His sentence marked the end of his career and the beginning of his reckoning. For Olivia, the story was far from over. Her bravery inspired others to speak out against injustice, and her role in the incident led to significant changes. Local police departments came under closer scrutiny, and reforms in training and selection processes were implemented. Seminars on ethics and accountability became mandatory, with Olivia invited as a keynote speaker. Standing before hundreds at these events, Olivia shared her story, not for applause, but as a reminder that power is meaningful only when used to protect and uplift, not to oppress. Her words resonated, encouraging individuals, especially those in law enforcement, to embrace dignity and respect for human rights. The ripple effect of Olivia's actions extended beyond her city. She became a symbol of hope and resilience, particularly for women and minorities who often face systemic discrimination. Her steadfastness inspired workshops, campaigns, and policy changes, ensuring that the values she defended were ingrained in future generations. For Olivia, the incident remained a turning point. Each time she reflected on that day, she felt no regret, only a quiet pride in knowing her actions had made a difference. Her legacy was more than a story of one woman standing up to injustice. It was a testament to the power of integrity and the courage to fight for what's right, even in the face of great opposition. Her name became a beacon of inspiration, her actions reminding society that true leadership lies not in authority but in accountability. And though Olivia Carter continued her life with humility, she carried the unshakable resolve to keep fighting for the values she believed in, a resolve that would inspire countless others to do the same. Olivia Carter's legacy didn't end with reforms or the recognition she received. It flourished in her daily actions, where she became a living example for the younger generation. They looked to her for guidance, learning how to face adversity with patience, resolve, and unwavering determination. Olivia never sought fame, but the respect she garnered, from colleagues, community members, and even strangers, stood as a testament to the power of integrity. Throughout her career, Olivia faced countless challenges. Yet, she always held her ground, understanding that true legacy isn't measured by awards or public accolades but by the values one imparts to others. For Olivia, her legacy lay in the ripple effect of the change she sparked, inspiring generations to stand for justice and confront injustice without fear. Years after the incident with Mark Daniels, Olivia set her sights on a larger mission. She recognized that injustice wasn't a rare occurrence but a pervasive issue that required systemic change. Every story she heard, from people mistreated or silenced, deepened her sense of responsibility. She understood that transformation couldn't rest on the shoulders of a few individuals. It required a collective effort. Olivia became the driving force behind a series of campaigns, urging people, particularly those in positions of authority, to reconsider their roles in upholding justice. She organized workshops, community forums, and media campaigns to amplify her message. Each of us has the right to say no to abuse of power. Each of us has the power to make a difference. Her message resonated beyond the military, reaching civilians who felt overlooked or voiceless. Olivia encouraged them to rise above fear, reminding them that justice was a fundamental right no one could take away. Her tone was no longer cautious but fiercely determined, understanding that every action, no matter how small, contributed to a larger movement. Olivia's determination fueled change. She turned her personal struggle into a call to action, reminding others that justice wasn't just an individual fight but a communal responsibility. Her workshops brought together people from all walks of life, activists, law enforcement, educators, and ordinary citizens, each inspired to take a stand against systemic injustice. Through her efforts, she cultivated a culture of accountability, ensuring that institutions and individuals alike understood the gravity of their roles. She spoke passionately at events, invoking her experiences not to dwell on the past but to empower others to forge a better future. Justice isn't a privilege, it's a right, she would say. And every one of us has the strength to defend it. Olivia knew the road ahead was long and filled with resistance. Not everyone would stand by her side, but she firmly believed in the power of solidarity. Each voice mattered, and every small victory contributed to a larger wave of change. Her fight wasn't just for herself, it was for those who couldn't speak for themselves, for the marginalized and silenced, and for the equitable society she envisioned. Olivia turned her struggle into a movement, proving that justice was not a fleeting ideal but a cause worth defending every day. In the years that followed, Olivia's work sparked profound changes. Police departments adopted stricter training protocols, schools integrated ethics and responsibility into their curriculums, and communities came together to support initiatives that fostered fairness and accountability. Her legacy lived not only in speeches or headlines but in the hearts of those inspired by her courage. The movement she helped create became a force for lasting change, reminding everyone that the fight for justice must be constant, collective, and courageous. For Olivia Carter, this journey was never about recognition. It was about standing firm in the belief that justice belongs to all, and ensuring that those who dream of a better future have the tools and the courage to make it a reality.